I'm sure that, like me, you've noticed those cars that for years and years sit in the doldrums. Nobody wants them, they sit there unloved, and you can pick them up for relative peanuts. And then all of a sudden, they just shoot up in value. And I've often wondered, why is it that that happens? And the Ferrari 456 that I'm in today is just such a car. You could pick up a leggy 456 like this one, and by leggy I mean this has 55,000 miles, which by Ferrari standards is leggy. So you could pick up a car like this for about £25,000, which for a manual Ferrari V12 was an absolute bargain. And yet, within the last 5 years, prices have pretty much doubled. This very car has just sold on collecting cars for about £50,000. That includes the buyer's premium. So this is Fergus. He owns the 456 that I've been driving, and he bought it originally. How much did you buy it for?
Late 37s.
Late 37s, and that was how long ago?
About 18 months ago.
18 months ago. How much did it actually cost you to run the car while you've had it in those 18 months?
Well, to run the car is probably about 6 to 7 grand. That included, the major thing was the clutch, which was 3 and a bit thousand, but we also did the inlet manifold gaskets, which really transformed the car and how it drove. But then I've also had sort of little niggle things as we've gone along. A lot of 36p clips that opened the door. I spent about 1,800 to 2,000 having the paint correction and having the interior redone, which isn't really a running cost, but yeah, it's probably all up cost me about 7,000, something like that to look after.
So overall, how much, where are you in terms of man maths and stuff? You bought it, you used it for 18 months, I think you've done 5,000 miles on it, so quite a good bit of mileage.
Yes.
And where are you overall?
I've man mathsed this into a little profit of about £1,000.
That's absolutely amazing. So you've actually had this car and it's almost the same as if you'd had some money in the bank pretty much for the 18 months.
Yeah.
So these cars, is it that they're unloved just because we never noticed that they were great cars and then all of a sudden we notice and the values shoot up? Is it because they just become rarer and that's what pushes up values? Or is it because when they first came out, maybe they had some issues that needed ironing out, and then over time people realised that, well, most of the problems actually have now been sorted and underneath is a very good car. So an example of that is a Porsche 964. Well, I don't really think that any of those actually apply to the 456. When it first came out, it was really well received by the press. There weren't any big production problems or quality problems, reliability, and the way it drove and handled was pretty much admired. The new V12 owed its heritage to the original Dino V6s in that it had a 65-degree angle between the cylinder banks. It produced a thumping, for the time, 440 horsepower, and it had a manual 6-speed gearbox. With 192 mile an hour top speed, it was also a really quick car. As a four-seater, I think only the Porsche 959 of the time was actually faster. This was actually a really advanced car for the time. It had adjustable aero, it had adjustable damping, so it has soft, medium and hard settings. And on the dampers, it really does actually make a difference what you do. On the lowest setting, it's really, really comfortable, but you wouldn't really want it on a nice little twisty road like this. It does make it a little bit too wallowy and struggles to keep the mass sort of contained, because this, after all, is quite a heavy car at 1,700 kilos. But the medium setting seems to work pretty well everywhere. On the harder setting, I find it a little bit too jiggly for my tastes, but jiggly being the operative road tester's term, of course. But yeah, the medium setting is fantastic, and if you're actually just going from A to B, then the softer setting makes it a very, very usable GT. It is a very wet, cold, clammy, slippery day, so I'm not going to do anything silly, but I have driven this 456 before, and I know that the engine is just fantastic. It's a very torquey lump. The torque comes in from low down. The one thing that it doesn't have is the sort of ballistic top end that you get in some of the other Ferrari V12s. If that's what you're expecting, you might be a bit disappointed. So the 456 was really well received when it came out, and they weren't built in large numbers, with just 3,000 having been built overall. Now the cabin is absolutely fantastic as an example of a Ferrari GT. I don't think it almost gets any better than this unless you go to some of the really old ones. Those 5 dials out there just scream Ferrari at you. It's so over the top. I don't know many other cars that have something like that. And the way the console rises up, the radio goes in, very unusual position, and of course you have that gated shifter, which just looks amazing. The most controversial aspect, I think, at the time were the looks. I really like it. It's one of my favorite looking Ferraris, but looks are a personal thing, and I think that people either love them or hate them, with a big proportion of people who don't like them and don't think it looks like a Ferrari. Is that perhaps what's been holding up values? But in that case, why has it suddenly shot up again? Is it because people have realized that it's actually a true usable Ferrari? And the answer to that is no. I think one of the problems with the 456 has always been that it is extremely expensive to maintain. Those rear seats, unless you have very young children, aren't really particularly usable. And there are the usual sort of 90s foibles that these have. Is it that people have finally realized what a fantastic car it is? Well, perhaps partly that could be it. But I think that to work out what's been happening with the 456, what you really need to do is you just need to go and have a look at the values of other Ferraris. For a long time, you could buy this car for a third or a quarter of the price of a Ferrari 550 or 575. And that just simply didn't make sense. This is now the cheapest way to get into V12 manual Ferrari ownership that you can find. Shockingly, the 400 series, which was never a great car to begin with, they actually seem to go now for between 50 to 100,000 pounds. 550s go for between 80 and 100, so that makes the 456 look incredible value even at 50,000 pounds. For a long time, a 456 was a quarter of the value of many other Ferraris. And when you realise that the V12s, which are soon to be extinct, the manual Ferraris, which are already extinct, that you can buy one of those and you can get into that market with the 456, then it makes sense that prices have gone up. I think that there is some way to go before these hit their true values. I think they've got close now. They have moved up a bit, but I think there's still a little movement there, because what you're getting for the money is just incredible. And yes, it may not have those sort of traditional Ferrari looks that people have come to expect, but I think that the design has sort of matured over time, and if anything, it looks even better today. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I look forward to seeing you for the next video.